Hi, welcome back to dev.log. In this week's episode, we'll be covering the current state of the homepage, the mobile state of the homepage, planning authentication, changes to the stack, and upcoming. The current state of the homepage, as I stated before in the previous episode, again, if you haven't seen that, go and watch that and you'll be better caught up. But at this point, I've got the nav bar relatively set up. There might be tweaks down the line, but for the most part, it is the way I relatively want it to be built out. That is what I did. Primarily, as you can see, I got this portion of the nav bar worked out, which is basically, I labeled it as the authentication menu, because you got your login, your sign up, and then I just added the toggle for the theme to be here. And then each of the parts, the text here, the divider here, and the button here, every time you refresh the page, it will change to whatever color in the logo design. So it can change to this green, this red, this yellow, this blue. So every time, again, once you refresh it, and as you can see, this is the dark design. So that's pretty much that. Again, just to quickly show that demonstration, pay attention to the color up here. Again, right now it's red, yellow, green, and then once we get, let's say here, every time we refresh, it changes when you refresh the page. It's not something that's constantly changing while you sit on the page. It's just every time the page is loaded up, it will change. It's just a small kind of detail thing and trying to show that there's different aspects to this. Moving forward, going into the code, we have basically parts that I went over last week. So again, I'll quickly run over them again, and then of course our new parts. Again, what we went over last week is our nav title, which encompasses the logo and the text. Then we have our nav selection, which this again will be built out later. I have it set up so again it takes in a component array basically, and it will fill out the information that's needed for these selections to work. Then the newest part has been this nav auth menu, which I have it set up so that it encompasses the toggle switch for the theme, and then divider, the login and sign up buttons. I also have it, of course, got the code here set up so that basically it won't appear until you get to a certain size on screen, because I'll be covering next this nav mobile home component. Moving forward, this is the current design for the mobile nav home. Once again, when you refresh the page, it will change, but when you click on the hamburger at the top, it will open up a drawer. It gives you all the same options as you would on the regular desktop side of things. Again, you're able to change your theme, colors change. It's just a simple way of creating a nav menu. I used the drawer from Shatsian UI. As with most of the items, the hamburger logo I got from Bootstrap icons. So moving forward, here's the designs for black and white and the color themes. So again, the light mode, again, they're the same, it's just dark and light theme. Decided to go with a drawer design for the menu rather than it being coming from the top part, just because I thought it would be easier in the sense of mobile design for someone to easily just hold the phone in basically a more comfortable way than trying to kind of hold it at the top and then select, or however. It just close to the bottom of the phone. And then of course you can close it out like this, but with the close button, of course. But if you tap on this area of the screen, it will disappear. Or if you can see here, it's better to see actually in dark mode, you could slide this down and then it will also go away. So there's multiple ways basically to close it. Again, very trying to be user friendly in that way. This is basically the entire component. It encapsulates everything. Again, it's pretty long. So let me kind of try to break this down. Everything is basically encapsulated in a drawer component, and that they're subparts. So this is the subpart where it is the button, and it's just a trigger that's wrapping around a button component, and then that wraps around the logo. I renamed this logo, so don't take it as what the name is. That's basically this. And then this is the rest of it, the drawer aspect of it. Actually, we have our basically nav selection, which is this, and it's divided each time by, again, a divider bar. So if it grows bigger, it all gets mapped out using this function here. Then we also have our basically nav authentication menu, where you can see that this information is here, and then we have our close button, which is just in the footer section. After I took care of finishing off the nav bar, I went on to starting authentication, though it has already been a bit of a pain, and I haven't even started yet. I've only been planning out the authentication and figuring out what would be best for the situation and the app that I'm building and what the stack I'm using. I had to decide basically, okay, there are certain needs that need to be met for the authentication that I'm looking for. I need to be able to have, of course, a sign up. So the sign up needs the email, password, as well as offering OAuth providers. So that's basically having that option to sign up with Google, Facebook, GitHub, whatever options I decide down the line with OAuth provider, but being able to have that ability, as well as log in as well. Again, same concept, email, password, OAuth providers, and then again, for it to be flexible so it can work around, I can change out things. So if I decide maybe actually I don't want to use this OAuth provider anymore, or I want it to have this information be delivered, or all the stuff tied to that, that is where the flexibility comes into play. And then I also want it to be easy. Authentication, I already know, is hard, especially come from like building it out yourself, though it's much easier than what you might have had to do way in the past. But again, I wanted something easy to set up. That is where it led me to start researching, and oh boy did I research. I think I spent a couple days actually researching and trying to debate which option would be the best. I narrowed it down to two options personally for me. Again, I know there's plenty of other options out there, Passport.js or Clerk, but I narrowed it down between Firebase Auth and then Auth.js, which was formerly known as NextAuth. The reasons for these two, first off, is Firebase was because I was already going to be using Firebase on the aspect of the database, so Firestore. So since I was already going to be using that, then why not just use the Firebase Auth was my concept. And since it already had other features built in, made it relatively easy. Again, it was a solid option that placed it up here. And then the next one that I researched heavily into was Auth.js, again, formerly NextAuth. It works with the primary focus from the start, again, with it used to being called NextAuth, was Next.js. And since I'm using Next.js as the way I'm building this web app, then that is what came to mind as a good way to set up authentication. But what really set it apart for me and made me feel better about it was going with Auth.js because it's open source and it doesn't tie me as much down to Firebase as I would want to. I'm not saying that Firebase is bad, but at the same time, if for some reason down the line I need to make a change, it won't be as hard. I know still it will be difficult, but it still won't be as hard, and there isn't as much, again, lock-in, and I don't want to feel locked in on any one certain aspect. Being able to have that flexibility with Auth.js, they have good community support, and again, works very well with Next.js. Now, this led me to have a mind-blowing moment after doing all this research and debating on what to do. That mind-blowing moment is basically, here's the current stack. Let me set this up here. Current stack for this app was a Next.js, basically front end, a Nest, make it this clear, Nest.js backend, and then that will then go to a Firestore database. though that has changed. The realization I came to, again, trying to search and understand this authentication stuff, is that I honestly don't need Nest.js, especially for an app like this. It isn't doing anything super crazy. The biggest thing is basically setting up for the collaborative stuff, but that is, I have the capability with Next.js and of course the Firebase database. So cutting out Nest.js from the stack and just keeping it as with Next.js as basically the front and back end. I did know that, of course, you can use Next.js as the front and back end aspects, but I thought, oh, let me keep this separate again so I can work on it better. After doing a lot of this research and stuff, I've just decided to, again, simplify the stack basically and keep it all basically into one project here. And then again, all the data is stored onto the Firestore, but keeping it built out so it's all one on here is where I feel like it would be good. Moving on, for this next part of the week, I will be working on authentication. It's pretty much just developing authentication. So I need to develop basically the sign-in page / form for logging in and making sure I have it, you know, the skeleton set up, as well as developing the login page. Once I probably have the sign-in page, it will be simpler because usually the sign-in will have more information for someone to fill out, and then I would then need to actually set up Auth.js and basically plug everything in for it to be able to send to the Firebase. So that's this week's episode. If you liked the video, then of course leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. I'm hopefully gonna have more progress this next week, and we'll keep building up this app and hopefully get to some cooler aspects of it.